The fluorescent lights of the conference room buzzed overhead as I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand still gripping the door handle. I wasn't supposed to hear what my boss just said to the VP of sales, but there it was, crystal clear through the thin office walls. Honestly, Rebecca's only here because the last guy quit. We needed a warm body in that position fast. My name is Rebecca Martinez, and I've been working at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions in downtown Chicago for 8 months. 8 months of 60-hour weeks, missed dinners, and turning around a department that was hemorrhaging clients faster than a sinking ship. But apparently, to my boss, Derek Thornton, I was just a warm body. The November wind rattled the windows of our 32nd floor office as I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding. The city sprawled below us, a maze of glass and steel that suddenly felt as cold as the lake-effect snow beginning to dust the streets. I'd moved here from Phoenix specifically for this job, leaving behind friends, family, and a comfortable life, because I believed in what Pinnacle could become. The Q4 numbers are mediocre at best, Derek continued inside the room. I mean, what can you expect from someone who's learning on the job? Learning on the job? I'd brought 5 years of experience from 2 Fortune 500 companies. I'd implemented 3 new client retention strategies that had already started showing results. But none of that seemed to matter to Derek, who'd inherited me when he got promoted to regional director 2 months ago. I walked back to my desk in a daze, past the motivational posters about teamwork and excellence that now felt like cruel jokes. My assistant, Monica Chen, looked up from her computer with concern. "Everything okay, Rebecca? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just processing some feedback," I managed, settling into my chair. The leather squeaked, a sound that usually comforted me but now felt like nails on a chalkboard. The rest of the day passed in a blur of client calls and strategy meetings, but Derek's words echoed in my mind. During lunch, I sat alone in the break room, picking at a salad while staring out at the Chicago River. The water looked gray and unforgiving, matching my mood perfectly. That evening, I stayed late to review the quarterly reports I'd been preparing for weeks. The numbers told a different story than Derek's dismissive comments suggested. Our client retention rate had improved by 32% since I'd started. Revenue was up 18% compared to the same period last year. We'd landed 3 major accounts that the previous manager had been chasing for months without success. As I printed out the reports, my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Emma back in Phoenix. "How's the Chicago dream going? Still loving the new job?" I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "It's complicated." The office was empty except for the cleaning crew, their vacuum cleaners humming in the distance. I gathered my things and headed for the elevator, my reflection in the polished doors showing a woman who looked tired and defeated. The Rebecca who'd walked into this building 8 months ago with fire in her eyes and determination in her step felt like a stranger now. Outside, the November air bit at my cheeks as I walked to the parking garage. Chicago in late fall was beautiful, but harsh, much like the corporate world I'd thrown myself into. I'd proven myself time and again, but apparently, that wasn't enough for Derek Thornton. As I drove home to my Lincoln Park apartment, passing the twinkling lights of the city I'd grown to love, one thought kept circling in my mind. Maybe it was time to show Derek exactly what this warm body was capable of. The next morning arrived gray and bitter, with snow beginning to stick to the windows of my apartment. I'd barely slept, Derek's words playing on repeat in my mind like a broken record. But somewhere between my 3rd cup of coffee and my morning run along the lakefront, something had shifted. The hurt was still there, but it was being overshadowed by something else: determination. I arrived at the office early, before even the most dedicated workaholics had claimed their spots. The morning sun cast long shadows across the empty cubicles as I settled at my desk with a purpose I hadn't felt in weeks. If Derek thought I was just a placeholder, I was going to show him exactly what he was about to lose. "You're here early," Monica observed as she arrived, hanging her coat on the rack. "And you look different, more focused." "I have a presentation to prepare," I said, not looking up from my laptop, "and some decisions to make." The morning flew by as I compiled data, crafted charts, and prepared what would either be my vindication or my swan song. By lunch, I had a comprehensive presentation that laid out not just our current performance, but a detailed roadmap for the next quarter that would position our department as the crown jewel of Pinnacle's Midwest operations. "Rebecca, you need to see this," Monica said, appearing at my desk with a concerned expression. She handed me a printout of an email thread between Derek and HR. The subject line made my stomach drop. Performance evaluation. Rebecca Martinez. I scanned the email quickly, my heart sinking with each line. Derek was questioning my fit with the company culture, suggesting that my aggressive management style wasn't aligning with Pinnacle's values. He was building a case, systematically undermining months of success with carefully worded criticisms. "How did you get this?" I asked Monica quietly. "Jennifer in HR left it on the printer. I don't think she realized what it was." Monica's expression was sympathetic, but firm. "Rebecca, they're trying to push you out. Derek's been meeting with corporate about restructuring the department." The pieces fell into place like dominoes. Derek hadn't just inherited me. He'd inherited a department that was finally turning around, and he wanted to take credit for it. Getting rid of me and hiring his own person would allow him to claim the success as his own strategic vision. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling tiles. The office around me hummed with activity, phones ringing, keyboards clicking, the coffee machine gurgling in the break room. This place had become my life, my identity, my future, and now it was being threatened by office politics and a boss who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to his advancement. "What are you going to do?" Monica asked softly. I looked at her, then at the presentation I'd been preparing, then at the email thread that exposed Derek's true intentions. "I'm going to fight back, but not the way he expects." That afternoon, I called my former colleague James Patterson in Phoenix. James had left corporate America 2 years ago to start his own consulting firm, and he'd been trying to recruit me ever since. "Rebecca, perfect timing. I was just thinking about you," James said, his voice warm through the phone. "How's the Windy City treating you? That's actually why I'm calling. Are you still looking for a senior partner?" There was a pause, then excitement in his voice. "Are you serious? What happened to the dream job at Pinnacle? Let's just say I'm ready for a change, but I need to handle some things here first. When can you start? I have 3 major clients who could use your expertise immediately." As I hung up the phone, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. But before I could move forward, I had one final play to make. Derek thought he could erase my contributions and take credit for my work. He was about to learn that underestimating Rebecca Martinez was the biggest mistake of his career. I spent the rest of the day refining my presentation and preparing for the quarterly review meeting scheduled for the next morning. By the time I left the office, snow was falling steadily, coating the city in a blanket of white that made everything look clean and new. Tomorrow, I would show Derek and the executive team exactly what they were losing, and then I would hand in my resignation with my head held high. The conference room was packed when I arrived the next morning, my presentation materials tucked under my arm like weapons ready for battle. Derek sat at the head of the table, flanked by VP of Sales Margaret Stevenson and Regional Manager Tom Bradley. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting sharp shadows across their faces. "Good morning, everyone," I said, setting up my laptop with steady hands despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I know you're expecting the standard quarterly review, but I have something a bit different prepared today." Derek shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Rebecca, we had discussed keeping this brief. The numbers speak for themselves." "Oh, they absolutely do," I replied, clicking to my first slide, "which is why I think you'll find this presentation particularly illuminating." The room fell silent as I began to walk through the data, not just the surface-level metrics Derek had been citing, but the deep dive into what had actually happened in our department over the past 8 months. Client retention rates, revenue growth, customer satisfaction scores, new business acquisition. Every metric told the same story. Dramatic improvement across the board. "As you can see," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each slide, "we've not only recovered from the previous management's challenges, but exceeded all targets set at the beginning of the fiscal year." Margaret leaned forward, studying the charts. "These numbers are impressive, Rebecca. The client retention rate alone represents a significant turnaround." "Thank you. But I want to be transparent about what it took to achieve these results." I clicked to the next slide, which showed a timeline of initiatives I'd implemented. Restructuring our client onboarding process, implementing weekly check-ins with key accounts, developing customized retention strategies for each client segment. These weren't quick fixes. They required complete operational overhaul. Tom Bradley nodded approvingly. The ROI on these initiatives is remarkable. Derek, you should be proud of the team you've built here. Derek's jaw tightened. Well, these are certainly encouraging trends, though I think we need to be cautious about reading too much into short-term fluctuations. Short-term? I turned to face him directly. Derek, these results span 8 months of consistent growth, but you're right to be cautious about the sustainability of these numbers. I clicked to my final slide, a detailed transition plan, which is why I've prepared a comprehensive handover document for whoever takes over this department. The room went completely silent. Margaret's eyebrows rose, and Tom leaned back in his chair with surprise. Handover document? Derek asked, his voice careful. Yes, because after much consideration, I've decided to resign from my position at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. My formal resignation letter, effective 2 weeks from today, along with detailed documentation of all current projects, client relationships, and strategic initiatives. Margaret looked shocked. Rebecca, this is unexpected. Your performance has been exemplary. Is there something we can do to address any concerns you might have? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. I appreciate that, Margaret, but I've accepted a position with Patterson Consulting Group in Phoenix. I'll be joining as a senior partner, with the opportunity to work with Fortune 500 clients across the Southwest. Derek's face had gone pale. Rebecca, let's not be hasty. Perhaps we should discuss. There's nothing to discuss, I interrupted gently but firmly. I've made my decision, but I want to ensure a smooth transition. Monica Chen would be an excellent interim manager. She knows the clients, understands the processes, and has the leadership skills to maintain our momentum. Tom Bradley spoke up. Rebecca, I have to say, losing someone with your track record is a significant loss for the company. Are you sure we can't make a counteroffer? I'm sure, but I want to thank you all for the opportunity to contribute to Pinnacle's success. I'm proud of what we've accomplished, and I'm confident the team will continue to thrive. As I packed up my materials, Derek finally found his voice. Rebecca, I hope you understand that this puts us in a difficult position. Losing someone mid-quarter, I understand completely, I replied, meeting his eyes, which is why I've prepared such detailed documentation. Any competent manager should be able to pick up where I left off. After all, I was able to turn around a failing department in 8 months. I'm sure whoever replaces me will do just fine. The barb hit its mark. Derek's face flushed, but he said nothing as I gathered my things and headed for the door. Rebecca, Margaret called after me. I'd like to speak with you privately before you leave. I nodded, feeling a mix of triumph and sadness as I left the conference room. The hardest part was over. Now came the equally challenging task of saying goodbye to the life I'd built in Chicago. 2 weeks later, I stood in my empty Lincoln Park apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the echoes of a life I was leaving behind. The Chicago skyline stretched out before me through the windows, a reminder of everything I'd accomplished and everything I was walking away from. Monica knocked on the door, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a bittersweet smile. Thought you might need some company for your last night. You're a lifesaver, I said, accepting the bottle and giving her a hug. How are things at the office? Chaotic, she admitted, settling onto one of the boxes since I'd already packed my furniture. Derek's been scrambling to find your replacement. He's interviewed 6 people so far, and none of them have your experience. Margaret asked me to step in temporarily, just like you suggested. And how does it feel to be the interim department head? Monica grinned. Terrifying and exhilarating, but I have a good teacher to thank for that. Your documentation has been incredible. I feel like you left me a roadmap for everything. We popped the champagne and toasted to new beginnings, sitting on the floor of my empty apartment as snow began to fall outside. The city lights twinkled like stars, and for the first time in months, I felt truly at peace with my decision. You know, Monica said, Derek finally admitted that losing you was a mistake. He told Margaret that he underestimated your value to the organization. I laughed, a sound that felt lighter than it had in weeks. It's amazing how quickly perspective changes when you're faced with the consequences of your actions. He also said something interesting in yesterday's staff meeting. He told the team that he hoped the new hire would be half as capable as Rebecca Martinez. Quite the reversal from his previous assessment. Too little, too late, I said, but without bitterness. Derek's opinion no longer mattered to me. What mattered was the opportunity ahead, the chance to build something meaningful with James's consulting firm, to work with clients who valued expertise over politics, to prove myself in an environment where results spoke louder than office relationships. My phone buzzed with a text from James. Flight confirmation for tomorrow. Can't wait to have you on the team. First client meeting is Thursday. They specifically requested to work with you based on your pinnacle results. I showed Monica the message, and she smiled. From corporate politics to client choice. That's quite an upgrade. It is, I agreed. But I learned something important from this whole experience. I spent so much time trying to prove myself to Derek that I almost forgot to prove myself to myself. The numbers, the success, the client relationships, those weren't flukes or luck. They were the result of hard work, strategic thinking, and leadership. And now you get to take all of that to Phoenix, where people will appreciate it from day one. As Monica left, and I finished my final packing, I took one last look around the apartment that had been my sanctuary during the most challenging period of my career. Chicago had tested me in ways I never expected, but it had also shown me what I was truly capable of when backed into a corner. The next morning, as my plane lifted off from O'Hare Airport, I looked down at the city that had become my proving ground. The frozen lake stretched out like a mirror, reflecting the sky and the promise of new possibilities. Derek Thornton thought he could dismiss me as a warm body, someone who was only there because the last guy quit. But I wasn't just any warm body. I was Rebecca Martinez, a leader who had turned around a failing department, built lasting client relationships, and proven that success comes from dedication, not from playing office politics. And now I was taking those skills to a place where they would be valued, celebrated, and given room to grow. 3 months later, I received a LinkedIn message from Margaret Stevenson. Rebecca, I wanted you to know that we're still feeling the impact of your departure. The department hasn't been the same since you left, and we're having trouble maintaining the client relationships you built. If you're ever interested in returning to Chicago, we'd love to discuss bringing you back in a senior role. I smiled as I read the message, then looked out the window of my new Phoenix office at the desert landscape that stretched to the horizon. Patterson Consulting Group had already secured 2 major contracts based on my work, and I was building a team of talented professionals who shared my vision for client-focused excellence. I wrote back, "Thank you for reaching out, Margaret. I'm flattered by the interest, but I'm exactly where I need to be. I wish you and the team all the best in Chicago. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated is simply to thrive somewhere else, and that's exactly what I intended to do."